point, I think AI will eventually be able to pass almost any Turing test that you throw at it. And outwardly, it will be indistinguishable from a human, especially if you can get it to the point, where you give it, you put it in a robot body and you give it human skin, and you mimic human eyes. At that point, which that is, physically possible, it seems like it might very well be indistinguishable from a human. But even if it is, and it can pass any Turing test, just if you don't add any organic components, there's no biology to it, that thing that's indistinguishable from a human will not be conscious. And I think...
Hold up. Why?
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think... have you heard of John Searle's Chinese room argument?
Yes. Yep. Although I'm not overly familiar with it, but I've heard it before.
Okay, good. I think it's worth going over.
Okay.
He first came up with it in a paper called Minds, Brains, and Programs. If anyone want to read it, I think it's a phenomenal paper. It's the seminal essay on the question of AI consciousness, and it says much more than I feel like I need to get into here. But if someone wants like a deeper understanding, make sure to check that out. It's John Searle, Minds, Brains, and Programs. But anyway, in this essay, Searle comes up with this philosophical experiment called the Chinese room, where you have a person, let's say it's an English speaker. It's an English speaker that doesn't know a shred of Chinese, and you're giving him a bunch of Chinese symbols, but you're giving him instructions in English for how to manipulate those symbols and then output something different. So the idea is that actual Chinese speakers will come outside the room and they will input a query in Chinese. It'll be a bunch of Chinese characters. And obviously this person doesn't know any Chinese, but they'll be able to use the instructions and syntactically manipulate the symbols in such a way that they'll be able to formulate a response that's in perfect Chinese and bring that out of the room and feed it to the person who gave the input. And to that person, it will be indistinguishable from an actual Chinese speaker. And you can see probably the parallel with the Turing test. Like this would be passing the Chinese Turing test, if you want to call it that. But what's crucial here is that the person has no understanding of Chinese either before or after manipulating the symbols, because the experiment is construed in such a way that the person is just given the instructions in English. The person's never learning anything about Chinese, and it never will be able to, because it's never going to have any translations or get any semantics out of it. It's going to be doing syntactic manipulation across the clock. It's just going to take these symbols, follow these cooking instructions. We might call that the algorithm. And then you'll see another parallel with actual computers. And then after using that algorithm, it's going to output something. So it gets an input. It does not understand that input, but it has an algorithm that just tells it what to do very specifically. And then it outputs something that to an outside observer seems like perfect Chinese.
Yes. So it's mimicking it perfectly, mimicking real Chinese without the actual knowledge of what it's doing. So it's indistinguishable, but it isn't knowing what it's doing from a language perspective. If I got that
exactly.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
fascinating.
That's right.
Yeah. And keep going.
Now, the purpose of the experiment is now compare it to an actual computer. What does an actual computer do? This is the computer. If you ask the computer to add 2 plus 2, what will it give you invariably?
Give you 4.
It will give you 4 if it's programmed correctly.
Yep.
If it's programmed correctly,
as long as you don't inject ideology or some other such nonsense. But continue.
Yeah. If it's programmed correctly, it will give you 4. But would you say, oh man, my computer really understands that 2 plus 2 equals 4? It tells you that every single time. I don't think you would say that. And I think the reason why is because the computer, it doesn't even know what 2 is. It doesn't know what addition is. It doesn't know what 4 is. It doesn't know what equality is. It doesn't know any of those things. It has no concepts. It has no understanding of these things. But you're giving it an input, and you're given it an algorithm, which is sort of like a cookbook. It tells you, hey, sprinkle 2 teaspoons of sugar, then do this, then do that, and you will come out with a cake. That's basically what a computer scientist does when it gives the computer an algorithm. And with these algorithms, just by virtue of using ones and zeros, because that is, all that a computer is at the base level, you can get it to do some pretty amazing things, and increase our productivity by, an incredible degree, especially now with these new AI systems. It seems like even more, and that goes back to the fundamental question of computer science, which is what can be automated? What tasks that are repetitive, that humans currently do, which of those tasks could we get a computer to do them such that we'll have more time to devote to other pursuits? That's the idea, I think, with technological growth in general. It allows us to be more productive, and I think computers are very good for that. And these AI systems, to get back to the point about the Chinese room, they're just going to be very complex systems, but they're going to, at the basic level, like what ChatGPT does is no different than what the person in the Chinese room is doing. ChatGPT has been programmed with an algorithm, and it's relevantly different with machine learning, because machine learning, as the name implies, the system can learn a little bit, but that's a misnomer, because it's not learning in the sense that a human does, that it has understanding. It just has the ability to create new instructions for itself. That's basically what it does. But even with that, it's as if you gave it like a more complex cookbook that allowed it to do more things. If you did that with the person in the Chinese room, like you gave him more detailed instructions, like maybe at the beginning you had instructions for that person that allowed it to give the correct response 50% of the time. Did it have any understanding? No, it didn't. But then you come up with more complex instructions that allow it to give the correct answer 100% of the time. Does it have understanding then? No, still no. So this might be analogous to these AI systems. They might just be more complex systems that are more useful, more applicable, more accurate, maybe even, hopefully. But they're still not going to have a shred of understanding. And that's why I can make that claim, which seems, it's a pretty big claim, I will say.
Sure.
It's a big claim to say that AI by itself, put in, because I think if you try to mimic the human brain and I'm not a biologist or a social scientist, so I can't elaborate on that part, but I do think there's something about consciousness that requires a biological component. A biological component is essential, from what I know, for consciousness. And sure, like there might be, some people say somewhere in the universe there might be synthetic life forms, not necessarily the organic kind that we know. And it would be awfully human centered to say that all life forms must be exactly like us, or must be like the life forms that we've observed. I don't think that's the case. I don't think everything must be just as what we've observed right now. I think there could be other sorts of life in the universe, and there might be synthetic life forms as opposed to the organic life that we know. But I think just the program in itself, just the ones and the zeros, that will never get you consciousness. And the reason why I think is elaborated by Searle's Chinese room. The computer is just going to be manipulating symbols. So that's why I would make such a strong claim.
No, it's fascinating.
Lack of humility that I have right now.